The crown has spoken, and this time there is no walking it back, no PR spin, and no diplomatic compromise. In an extraordinary sequence of events that has sent absolute shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, Montecito, and every royal newsroom from London to Los Angeles, Princess Anne has done something the monarchy almost never does. She has drawn a line in the sand. It is a hard institutional constitutional line, and that line has Lilibet's name written right across it. Meghan Markle's world, the carefully curated empire of candles, wellness campaigns, and relentless branding, is now in absolute freefall. The royal family is no longer watching from a distance, wringing their hands behind closed doors. They are acting, and they have made it unmistakably clear that Lilibet's future is no longer solely in Meghan's hands. So you have to ask yourself right now, how far is too far when it comes to a child's public image? At what point does a mother's ambition cross a threshold that the rest of the world, including a 1,000-year-old monarchy, simply cannot ignore? What has unfolded in just the last few weeks is more dramatic, more legally explosive, and more emotionally raw than anything we have seen from the House of Windsor in decades. This isn't tabloid gossip. This is documented, it is time-stamped, and it is escalating by the hour. Let's go back to the 23rd of January 2026. Behind the heavy gilded doors of Buckingham Palace, something entirely unprecedented was unfolding. A crisis meeting had been called. This wasn't a routine briefing, and it certainly wasn't a ceremonial gathering. It was a full-scale emergency session, and the people sitting in that room tell you everything you need to know about how critical this situation has become. Princess Anne was chairing the session. King Charles III was present in person. Prince William, Duchess Sophie, and the royal family's principal legal advisors were all gathered. But here is the detail that should absolutely stop you in your tracks. Sitting alongside the senior royals was an external representative from the UK's Department for Children and Families. When child welfare officials from a government department are brought inside Buckingham Palace to discuss a matter involving the royal family, you are no longer in the territory of a simple domestic dispute. You have crossed firmly into the realm of institutional intervention. That session lasted over 3 grueling hours. By all accounts, what emerged from that room was the most sweeping, aggressive child protection directive the monarchy has issued in more than 20 years. The Catalyst internal legal report submitted by Prince Harry's own UK legal counsel had reached royal authorities containing what insiders described as severe alarms about the welfare of 2 children living in California. The very next morning, Clarence House released a statement. It was not a soft, carefully worded piece of royal public relations. It was a declaration. It explicitly expressed grave concern regarding the physical, emotional, and educational welfare of Master Archie and Lady Lilibet. It condemned any attempts to commodify or divide the siblings for financial or image purposes. That word commodify was chosen with laser precision, and Meghan Markle's team knew exactly who the target was. But what the palace uncovered next made those initial alarms look entirely understated. Here is where the story takes a turn that is incredibly difficult to hear, especially for anyone who believes in letting children just be children. Princess Anne's advisory team compiled a dossier that insiders in private palace circles have been calling the Lilibet logs. This was a highly detailed, documented account of a 6-year-old child's weekly schedule. We are not talking about school runs, gymnastics practice, or afternoon playdates. According to this internal dossier, Lilibet's week looked like a corporate itinerary. Mondays and Wednesdays were dedicated to filming short-form content for the As Ever brand. Thursdays involved intensive voice training for a potential audiobook narration. Fridays were blocked out for Mommy and Me product shoots targeting 2 upcoming wellness campaigns. And the weekends, they were consumed by brand-related activities, including live streams, product unboxings, toy demonstrations, and virtual meet and greets via private platforms. This is a 6-year-old girl. She doesn't even have all her adult teeth yet. She is at an age where developmental psychologists universally agree that unstructured, messy play is neurologically critical for a developing brain. Instead, according to documentation submitted by Prince Harry's own lawyers, Lilibet had logged over 192 recorded work hours between October and December of 2025. That is the equivalent of 6 adult work weeks crammed into a single quarter, all shouldered by a child who had just turned 6. When Prince William was briefed on these numbers during a closed-door roundtable, his response was reportedly raw and entirely unmeasured. He stated on the record that she is already more exhausted than most working women in their 30s, calling it not a childhood, but exploitation. And the accounts from former contractors only made it darker. Multiple workers connected to the brand spoke anonymously to palace investigators describing deeply uncomfortable scenes. One recounted Lilibet crying quietly for over 15 minutes after forgetting a scripted line, only to be told by Meghan's assistant that she needed to learn resilience. Another detailed an incident where Meghan, frustrated by a filming delay, told her 6-year-old daughter that if she wanted to build something in this world, she had to show up every time with no exceptions. Yet the most devastating piece of evidence didn't come from a contractor or a lawyer. It came from the child herself. In late December, a third-party child psychologist retained by Prince Harry's legal team held 2 confidential video sessions with Lilibet. The child's statements weren't legally binding in a courtroom, but what she said was so simple, so painfully clear, that when it was read aloud during an emergency briefing at Windsor, the entire room fell dead silent. Lilibet told the psychologist, "I want to go where I don't have to smile every time. I want to be with Archie." One royal source described the immense weight of those words. It wasn't just a little girl asking to see her brother. It was a child fundamentally rejecting performance as her identity. She wasn't asking for a new toy or an extended bedtime. She was asking with devastating emotional clarity to be allowed to exist in a space where her facial expressions weren't being monetized. She just wanted to stop performing. And that brings us to the profound shadow hanging over this entire situation, the other child in the story. The one who has largely disappeared from view entirely. The one whose absence Duchess Sophie reportedly described in a private session as a silence that screams, "Where is Archie Harrison?" This is the question that has haunted senior members of the royal family for over a year. The 7-year-old boy has not appeared in any public or private royal channels for over 14 months. No media, no family imagery, completely off the grid. This vanishing act runs in deeply disturbing contrast to his younger sister's near-constant hyper-visible presence in promotional content and brand campaigns. According to internal family reports, school attendance records from his Los Angeles elementary school indicated sporadic presence and severe emotional withdrawal. Prince Harry's own confidential notes described his son as exhibiting deeply anxious responses whenever cameras or filming equipment were brought into the home. The boy has developed a severe aversion to being photographed. Just process that for a moment. A 7-year-old boy, the grandson of a reigning king, has become terrified of the sight of a lens. During a strategy session at Kensington Palace, Duchess Sophie warned that they must ensure Archie is not emotionally orphaned while both of his parents are engaged in a public war. Harry's accounts confirmed that when filming equipment enters the house for Lily's shoots, Archie becomes visibly shaken, retreating into a flat, withdrawn state. The palace is now openly grappling with a horrifying duality. One child is being systematically overexposed, while the other is being made entirely invisible. Both, in vastly different ways, appear to be suffering immensely. But the machinery of the monarchy was about to accelerate, moving from expressions of concern to undeniable legal action. The catalyst for this escalation was Brentwood Academy. This is the piece of the puzzle Meghan has been fiercely guarding from the public narrative. Lilibet was enrolled at Brentwood Academy in Los Angeles, but in early December, Meghan suddenly pulled her from the school. The public reasoning provided was a disagreement over curriculum freedom and media restrictions. However, the reality hidden in the paperwork was very different. On the 10th of December, Brentwood issued a formal absence report. They didn't just note that the child was missing class. They formally flagged that crucial social development markers were not being met at expected levels. When Harry's legal team filed their court documents, this Brentwood letter was included as hard evidence. It cited severe absenteeism, an inability to confirm basic learning milestones, and serious concerns over Lilibet's emotional self-regulation. The school's ultimate recommendation was that Lilibet undergo a full developmental assessment if the homeschooling plan was to continue. Instead of scaling back, palace sources confirmed that over 10 commercial contracts involving Lilibet were actively in motion, spanning fashion lines, skincare, scripted video content, and educational toys. 10 lucrative contracts for a little girl who cannot legally sign her own name. When confronted during a press conference about her daughter working excessive hours, Meghan didn't back down. She paused and boldly stated, "She's not working, she's creating. There's a difference." But the palace and California's Child and Family Services saw absolutely no nuance in that statement. Then came the seismic shockwave that caught everyone, especially Meghan's legal team, completely off guard. On the 2nd of January, Prince Harry filed an official custody request with the Los Angeles Superior Court. He wasn't posturing. He was seeking full legal and physical custody of both Archie and Lilibet. This was a formal legal action filed in an American court by a British prince entirely without Meghan's prior knowledge or consent. His filing included a haunting phrase that has since defined this entire saga, stating that the emotional bifurcation of siblings is not a solution, but rather institutionalized trauma. Meghan's camp scrambled into a frenzy. Days later, they fired back with a counter motion proposing a split custody framework. Under her proposal, Archie would spend 9 months of the year with Harry in the UK, while Lily would remain full-time in California. The justification, Meghan cited educational, therapeutic, and career systems already in place for Lilibet that could not be replicated abroad. When Princess Anne and Prince William reviewed that counter-filing, the alarm bells were deafening. The sheer audacity of framing a first grader as possessing a career infrastructure that required legal protection in a transatlantic custody battle was considered by the palace to be entirely unjustifiable. This realization triggered the immediate activation of the Royal Child Preservation Council. Formed internally on the 1st of February, this council is being described by Kensington Palace insiders as the most aggressive, non-political royal body established since the Diana Crisis Committee of 1997. Led relentlessly by Princess Anne and reporting directly to King Charles, the council includes senior legal advisors, independent pediatric psychologists, and international diplomatic representatives specializing in transatlantic citizenship law. Its sole mission is to preserve the private development and emotional stability of royal descendants abroad in circumstances of extreme image overexposure. This is a body with serious teeth. In a move described as rarely used but constitutionally permissible, Clarence House reached right across the Atlantic Ocean, filing an official request with California state medical boards to procure full psychological and health wellness reports for both children. They invoked the sovereign protection rights extended to royal descendants. The message was chillingly clear. The palace believes that royal blood creates a duty of protection that does not evaporate at the American border. They were no longer making gentle suggestions. They were issuing institutional directives backed by centuries of legal framework. Meghan, however, refused to retreat. In late January, she held a highly controlled virtual press conference. Seated in front of perfectly soft-lit shelves deliberately staged to project calm authority, her central message was defiant. She insisted Lilibet wasn't being exploited but empowered. She openly called Harry regressive and framed herself as a visionary modern mother completely misunderstood by an archaic, backward institution. But it was in her attempt to generate public sympathy that she inadvertently revealed the psychological core of the entire conflict. Meghan began speaking about her own childhood. The one-bedroom apartment, the second-hand textbooks, the feeling of watching classmates with legacy surnames effortlessly leap ahead. Then she described Lilibet as her second chance at getting it right. That single phrase echoed through the palace briefing rooms like a siren. It fundamentally reframed Lilibet not as an independent child with her own future, but as a vessel constructed to heal Meghan's unfinished personal history. As one palace insider devastatingly observed, "You do not heal your own childhood by hijacking your child's future." To make matters even more complicated, word leaked of a new trademark application Meghan was reportedly pushing to register under Lilibet's name, Raised by Purpose. A commercial trademark for a 6-year-old girl who had just confessed to a psychologist that she desperately wanted to stop smiling on command. Yet amid the legal threats and the bitter public posturing, the most consequential move was happening in total silence. Princess Catherine had quietly positioned herself as the single person capable of preventing this from becoming a permanent tragedy. Insiders revealed that Catherine spent weeks meticulously building the framework for a highly classified in-person family summit at Windsor Castle, internally dubbed the Windsor Reset. No press, no recording devices, no PR teams, and no lawyers. just the core family in a secure wing talking solely about the fate of two children. While Meghan's camp remained silent on the invitation, Catherine didn't wait for a formal RSVP. She bypassed the legal teams entirely and sent Meghan a handwritten, deeply personal letter. The contents, verified by trusted palace aides, were disarmingly honest. Catherine bypassed the institutional anger and anchored her words entirely in shared motherhood. She wrote, "Whatever divides us, I believe we both want them to feel loved before they feel watched. I hope we can still agree on that." It was a staggering move. A future queen writing by hand to the woman who had spent years publicly dismantling her family's reputation, choosing to find common ground in the instinct to protect a child. It wasn't a sign of weakness. It was the most sophisticated, devastatingly empathetic maneuver in the entire Transatlantic War. Now the palace waits, but they are not waiting without a loaded weapon. Communications teams have fully prepped a dual contingency plan known as Operation Veil. Path A envisions Meghan attending the Windsor summit, de-escalating the crisis and allowing the council to monitor the children's welfare quietly from the shadows. Path B is the nuclear option. If Meghan refuses to engage, or if she attempts to undermine the monarchy through another tell-all interview or documentary, the crown will strike back with uncompromising force. They will issue a full public endorsement of Harry's custody petition. But more critically, they are preparing to strip every royal visual identifier attached to Meghan's commercial products. Lilibet would retain her bloodline, but the royal coats of arms, the subtle crests, and the phrases hinting at royal lineage embedded in the As Ever brand would be revoked entirely. It would be a thunderous global signal that royal lineage does not grant a blank check to market wellness retreats and lifestyle brands on the back of a first grader. The clock has effectively run out. We are looking at a monarchy that has learned the hardest possible lessons from its own dark history. King Charles lived through the agonizing collapse of his marriage, the tragic unraveling of Diana's life in the flash of paparazzi cameras, and the brutal cost of an institution failing to protect its most vulnerable members. He appears to have made a quiet, irreversible vow he will not let history repeat itself on his watch. Princess Anne stands ready with the full weight of the British government behind her. Catherine has extended the only olive branch left. The crown is wide awake, it is watching every single move, and it absolutely will not blink. The only question left is what Meghan will do when forced into a corner she cannot PR her way out of. Will she walk into Windsor Castle and sit at that table as a mother? Or will she escalate the war and risk losing the very empire she built? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because the next chapter of this royal saga is days away, and it is going to change everything.